Hi Ann. I would like to talk about advice that I would give new bearded dragon owners. Thanks for stopping by.
You're watching Midwest Lizard Mom.
Number 1, they will grow fast, and I mean fast. My bearded dragon grew to about adult size pretty close to a year and kept growing a little bit, but he grew so fast. So if you haven't gotten your terrarium yet for them, you might want to consider starting out with either a slightly larger one than you might be considering, or just get a full-size 4x2x2. If you get a 4x2x2, it might be a little overwhelming at first, but then they will be growing up in their tank for their, entire life in that same tank. Just something to consider. Otherwise, if you get one, I wouldn't start out with a 20-gallon because they're going to grow out of that super fast. Maybe start out with a 40-gallon. But if you have a 20 already, Petco, PetSmart, I can't remember which one, they usually have dollar per gallon sales on their tanks. If you get one of those and you already have it, might as well just use it. But just know that they're going to grow fast and you're going to need to upgrade. And when they're fully grown, you're going to want a 4x2x2. Since we're talking about their first year, it's important to make sure that you're getting them good food, good supplements, and good UVB and other lighting. So make sure that you're having your tank set up appropriately. This isn't a full care guide. It's just some advice of things to look into and things to be aware of. So what I will say is make sure that you're getting a good UVB. You want to get a linear UVB. And the one that I use that I really trust is the Arcadia T5. They last for a year. Other ones should be replaced after 6 months. And they provide a lot of bright light. The reason why UVB lighting is so important is if they don't have adequate UVB and calcium with D3 supplements in their diet, then they can get what's called metabolic bone disease, which can really hurt their skeleton. And it's irreversible. You can stop it from progressing, but once it gets to a certain point, you can't undo it. Make sure you have adequate UVB and that you have calcium with D3. Multivitamin is very important. Some multivitamins have calcium with vitamin D, so that's a win-win. And that you're feeding the appropriate diet as well. Now, you might be tempted to go with a loose substrate. Don't do it until they're at least a year old if you're going to do it at all. A loose substrate can put your baby dragon in danger of impaction, which means they lick a lot of things. Like they'll lick the surfaces, they'll lick the sand or soil sand mixture. And that can actually kind of build up in their system, and it could be fatal to them. So it's not a good thing. You don't want that to happen. Once they're a year old and your husbandry is right and you make sure that they are clear of parasites, you want to get a fecal exam from your vet, then you could consider loose substrate if that's what you want to do. I have a liner that I got, and he has other enrichments as well. He has baths. At some point I might put a dig box in there, but because he's not a female, he doesn't need it to lay eggs. So it's more of an enrichment if I do it at all. The other thing is if they have parasites or any kind of illnesses, you're going to want to take all of that substrate out, clean it, thoroughly clean the enclosure, make sure that everything is clean until they're fully clear with their vet in order to put that substrate back in, and new substrate, of course. Because if you leave the substrate as it is and you're treating them for an illness, then that can continue to circulate. So another reason why you want to wait. The other thing is if you get a new dragon, even if they're fully grown, say you adopt one, which is great, just wait until they're fully clear. So give it at least a couple weeks or a couple months. Go to your vet, have a clean fecal, make sure that their husbandry is right before you introduce a loose substrate. That's my advice. I interrupt this video to ask you a question. What is some advice that you have received that has been helpful or not so helpful? Just curious what you've been hearing. Put a comment below and we can have a conversation about it. Next, you'll want to plan on a varied diet. So you'll want to give them a variety of bugs, a variety of things in their salad. Just make sure that you're sticking to the things that are safe. Again, that's where being part of a Facebook group is helpful, or doing your research is helpful. Bearded Dragon Knowledge has information on what is safe to eat, what is not safe. the type of diet they have at what ages. And of course, things can vary slightly as far as how much based on your dragon. You don't want an obese dragon, just FYI. When my dragon was growing up and he was still a baby, he was eating a ton of bugs. So I got my bugs from Dubia.com. They're not sponsoring this at all. I'm just a fan, but they have a nice variety and at reasonable prices. So I would get dubia roaches, which never thought I would ever have roaches in my house ever, but I have a guide on how to avoid them from escaping. So you might want to check that out. It's important for them to have a variety. So I do give him dubia roaches. I give him super worms, more of a treat or training, and I'll talk about that another time. I'll also give black soldier fly larvae. They can turn pretty quickly, unfortunately. Crickets, but only when I've run out of stuff from Dubia, then I'll give them crickets, because my local pet store has crickets, and they can carry parasites and such, so I don't like to give them, but it's something I can use as a backup, and then, again, variety. Hornworms are more of a treat, or if they're dehydrated, they're very watery. Waxworms are very fatty, so you want to stay away from those. Again, a treat. Silkworms are great. You can't always find them, unfortunately. So there's a lot of options for food, salads as well as bugs. It's important to get them variety.